Welcome to ANU Indonesia Project Global Seminar. My name is Harijanti and I'm hosting this program with Lishia from Jakarta. We acknowledge the first Australians and pay our respect to elders past, present, and emerging. We are grateful for the support from the Australian National University and also the Australian Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. Today's webinar is part of our series on climate change and to some extent also our series on gender equality and social inclusion, or GESI. I'm very pleased to welcome back Lishia Erza from Apindo. She's connecting from Washington, DC, as I understand. And also, I'm also very pleased to introduce Ibu Lany Harijanti from the Global Reporting Initiative. And today we will be talking about the increasing use of ESG, environmental, social, and governance criteria in investment screening, including in Indonesia. So our speakers will specifically look at how SMEs, small and medium enterprises in Indonesia, in addressing this criteria and also the challenges in doing so. As usual, we will have Q&A session after the talks, but if you want, you can write your question anytime on the Q&A box, not on the chat box, and we will attend to them after the presentations. Please also kindly respond to the little polling on your screen because we need them to improve our series. Thank you. So without further ado, let me invite first Lishia to start the seminar. Over to you, Lishia.
Thank you, Marianto. Hello, everyone. Welcome, and thank you for joining us today. I'm going to start sharing my screen for the presentation. So a little bit of background about myself while it's loading. So I run a company, a supply chain finance company out of Indonesia, and we have offices in Singapore and also in Europe. But I am also part of Apindo, which is one of the largest trade associations in Indonesia. And a lot of the things that we do kind of overlap, but today I'll be sharing a little bit about how we work with supply chains and how we work with then by extension SMEs and the sustainability agenda. As a company, we do several things. We work with technologies to provide technologies to financial service providers. We work as advisors for green and sustainability for supply chains in different sectors. We have a different business arm that's also doing a lot of finance instrument designs and also research, access to supply chain finance and trade finance facilities. We have one small unit that's doing consulting, and this is sometimes we have part of government agencies asking us to work with them to shape different value chain maps, sometimes sustainability agenda at district level. And we work with a lot of universities in Indonesia and also in Europe in providing teaching and research around supply chain finance. Now, as a company, we have been awarded several things in the sustainable space. And most recently, we've been awarded Best Provider of Sustainable Finance Solution in Supply Chain Finance. Now, actually what that means, usually when we think about finance, the financial sector, this is a picture that we see. But then a couple of years ago, the Peatlands Restoration Agency in Indonesia invited us to work with them in identifying the types of value chains that are available in conservation areas, especially in peatland areas in Indonesia. As a country, Indonesia has one of the largest peatland coverages around the world. Some say 20+%, another would say 36%, but basically it's just big. Then, of course, we'd have to go into rural areas, have a look at smaller businesses that are operating within larger value chains, but also with conservation and sustainability agenda at the heart of it. So this is what happened. I'd be on a bike, I fall into a mud, and then people would have to fish me out of the peatland bog. And that's beside the point. Now, as a company, what we believe in is usually more than just financial capital. Even though we're a supply chain finance company, even though we're a technology company, we believe in multi-capital approach. First of all, whatever we see around us, whatever business or economy is being built around us, it will always have a produced capital because we're producing that to be new capital, new materials, new values. But at the same time, as we operate, we always have a look at the social and human capital around it, especially when we talk about conservation. It's not enough to just conserve from a natural capital perspective, but also from a social and human capital communities that live around these conservation areas. Sometimes they even live on the conservation areas. And because these capitals have dependencies, there are costs and benefits, whatever we do. There are always impact, whether it's to the business, whether it's the society. And then of course, lastly would come the financial layer upon it, where the financial sector would then have a look at different risks, different opportunities on the business, and now increasingly on the ESG aspect of it, whether a business is creditworthy or not, whether an entrepreneur is creditworthy or not. A lot of times now, we'll also look at the environmental, social, and governance aspect of these individual businesses or individual entrepreneurs. So why SME and why now? What we're observing at the moment is that there's a lot more pressure coming from multiple stakeholders. Most countries and most regions now are also imposing regulation on various supply chains. And they are pushing for, even if you're in Europe, that the supply chains that the companies in Europe need to look after also the sustainability aspect of their suppliers or distribution networks anywhere around the world. But then there's also the pressure coming from investors and also the industry. Certain industries are more pronounced than others. When we talk about sustainability, a lot of times we'd hear immediately in the energy sector or sometimes in the agricultural sector, it'll be palm oil. But other than that, any industry, most investors and most industries are looking towards making the supply chains even better running. And then there's also the generational sustainability orientation. What people say is the millennial generation are now more conscious about what they consume, what they produce. So then your market also shifts toward a market that is more concerned about sustainability as an agenda. And then of course, obviously the supply chains are applying huge importance on ESG. The clothes that we wear, the food that we eat, the cars that we drive. And SMEs are part of the larger ecosystem because the SMEs become supply chain of these larger companies, whether as suppliers upstream or even downstream as a distributor and user of certain products. And therefore, sustainability and ESG becomes a new vector of value creation for SMEs. It is time for SMEs to then identify how they can create better value out of the ESG trends that we're looking at the moment. And it's proven that sustainability-driven SMEs are more resilient to shocks, whether it's COVID, whether it's environmental shocks, and therefore making the SMEs more creditworthy when they take into account sustainability agenda. And then, of course, if we tie it back to the SDGs, then we'll have the impact. Any investment into the SMEs will make the SME more competitive. By making the SMEs more competitive, then, of course, you'll have the immediate one would be the employee impact. There's no poverty. And then when we look into the business practices, then we start looking into gender, we look into life on land, life on water. So then it has direct impact, even with a small investment into any SME, even if it's a personal investment, institutional investment. And then, of course, we start looking into the sector impact and ultimately the national economy impact. So sustainability and SME, it needs to happen now. And then, of course, the impact is even greater when we look at the bigger picture. But then our experience in working with the SMEs will take us on a journey. What types of SMEs would start working with ESG as part of their strategy, whether the SMEs are at the early stage, or sometimes what we look at now, a lot of these SMEs also then create themselves, present themselves as social enterprises where the leaders have a purpose in making their business ESG driven or heavily at the core sustainable. So maybe this is just a rough category that I put together. There's the first bracket, where this is the pre-work in sustainability, in bringing ESG into the minds of SMEs. In this pre-work, a lot of the SMEs are the ones that are, I would say, unenlightened. They're not aware that there is such an agenda. They're unaware that it's actually an opportunity or even a risk. And in this bracket, it is a very basic introduction that needs to be done because they're at the beginning of the journey. But then there are SMEs in the second bracket where some of them incorporate ESG elements, environment, social, and governance, because it is part of a compliance effort. It is part of an enforcement that's being done onto them. And then there are almost a similar bracket are those who identify the value of incorporating sustainability as part of their business. So they're aware, they're starting to do it, but they're doing it for reasons of external forces, risk avoidance, making sure you don't get fined, value identification. Okay, there's value in recycling some of my products, so then it saves a lot of costs, for example. So there are external efforts or powers that influence this second bracket. And then there's a third bracket of SMEs in the journey where they've already put sustainability as part of their integrated strategy. In their hiring process, for example, it's already part of their strategy, in their sales process, in their production process. And then, of course, what we ultimately would like are SMEs that are purpose-driven. So then the drive comes not just from external forces, but it's also from the internal ones. What does this mean, actually? What this means is actually how we then engage with the SMEs in this journey. For the pre-work one, we do a lot of education. For the second bracket, we do a lot of enabling, which I will talk a little bit more just in a bit. And then for the third bracket, it's more empowering them because internally they already have ESG at the heart of their business. They're already leading the companies in making this sustainability effort and opportunity part of their business from the get-go, and it's a lot of empowering then. Now for the first bracket, the education, we worked with UNDP and the government of Japan recently, where together with Ibu Lany and the team as well, we introduced the principles to SMEs that are starting less than 1 year. They're at the beginning of the journey, and we're trying to explain to them certain things. Yes, the modules are about business, about entrepreneurship, about product development, but as part of the training module, what we put is one specific module, which is about sustainability. What is sustainability? How do you then create a business model around a sustainability agenda? And we have another project that we work with the UN Capital Development Fund, where we see this is a time for SMEs to recover. And since you're remodeling your business, why not embed sustainability from the get-go? So instead of just working on the first bracket, we try to instill sustainability right at the core of the leader's vision themselves. What we find, though, is that green skills competencies differ. Whether the SMEs are looking at creating green jobs, or they're creating leadership skills that uses ESG. Say, for example, there's a crisis and then you have to choose between hiring or letting go certain team members. Who do you choose? Is it gender-based? Is it disability-based? But then there's also the skills to create a pure, truly transformative capacities. And this is where you have to then work with others, work as a collective. You think about systems, and then you start also then shaping the trends and the policies around us. And it's very different whether we're working with SMEs at the instrumental level or whether we're working with SMEs at the transformational level. And this makes a whole lot of difference in the way we deliver the training, the program, and everything with the enabling ecosystem around it. So with the first program with UNDP, it was 1,200 SMEs, and we had modules about inclusion, and the makeup of this group are also SMEs led by women, youth, and people with disabilities. And in transforming these SMEs, they went through a program where they were trained, they get to do the work. So they shape their own business, they create their own presentation and business model. And we had them sit with impact investors to get feedback. We sit them down with market facilitators to get feedback on, say, for example, one of the cohorts are producing fashion products, but they are empowering people who are used to have a problem with the authorities, former prisoners, as part of the workforce that they have. Another business would be recycling, which we hear a lot about. Another one would be developing new products out of waste that they see in the market. So different SMEs turn out to have different aspects, whether it's the instrumental or transformational, even if they go through the same templated program. And then we work with SMEs on increasing access to finance. And here what we see is that a lot of women are actually interested, but they're not sure how to embed it. And needs a lot of hand-holding. And sometimes it's not apparent that the sustainability aspect or sustainability strategy or sustainability shaping of their business is right in front of them. So we do different things. And then the second thing that we're trying to bring sustainability into the development of the SME is for this enabling environment. And here the work is a little bit more complex in the sense that we work with the World Resources Institute, for example. There's a portal that manages information around peatlands, fire spots. If you live in Southeast Asia, sometimes there are times of the year where forest fires are more prevalent and therefore also risky to peatlands. So what we work with World Resources Institute is to enable SMEs to then develop their business and also safeguarding the environment through a digital portal. The portal at the moment is under
Lishia, I think, can you try your sound and get your voice?
Hello.
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
Right. So then with, I think my internet got unstable for a little bit. So here what we do is provide the technology platform where if you're an SME living or on a peatlands or next to a peatland conserved area, you can still find supporters for your business, investors for your business, and also incubators and accelerators that support your business. So this is an enabling environment where they can find themselves ways to develop as SMEs. And then another area where we work in is that we map out within supply chains, where is the highest risk for environmental risk within a supply chain? In the textile and garment industry, for example, almost 30% comes from the early stages of the product development. From the fiber production, yarn and fabric production, it's already 32+%. And this is where we then see this is an opportunity for the SMEs to become more enabled. They understand how to develop new products, how to produce better, more responsible consumption and production work here, as opposed to when it comes to textile production and consumption, where a lot of the larger brands have more roles in this area. We work with local communities in using byproducts from pineapple farming to develop new fiber yarns, where this becomes part of the yarn and fiber and denim industry. So something from waste, when we empower and enable the supply chain from a mix of financial instruments, machinery, skill sets, and industrial knowledge, then the scaling up of the SMEs become a lot faster, and the uptake for the new material becomes a lot faster too. And in this in this example, what we try to design from the beginning is the involvement of women in the process, where agriculture are largely known to be a male-dominated activity. In the post harvest side of things, women can be included in the process. And this is what we try to do by enabling the women and enabling the supply chain, which is not just about the training. And then, of course, then the third bracket is the empower, where we're working with people who are already interested, who are already integrating strategies, of sustainability strategies in their business development. And here, what we see is something a little bit more complex, where we empower through different means of financing and technologies. When we look at even food production, for example, yes, there's the production, but there's also the sustainable consumption around it. There's the technology in whether it's the waste, it's the data, it's the climate smart agriculture. And then, of course, there's a conservation element and the social equity and sustainable livelihoods that comes into play. And with this, then the empowerment comes from different financing tools, whether it's in the form of public equities, debt, assets. And this is where an empowerment effort becomes a little bit more complex, takes more time, and we need to work with different parties to make it happen. We like mapping our supply chains and empowering throughout the supply chain, because sometimes some things as simple as rice, for example, we only see it as harvested, being part of food, whereas actually when we look at the bigger value chain, we can start understanding if we empower the businesses who already have sustainability as part of their integrated strategy, then a lot of the byproducts can be produced and enter into a different value chain, where it then becomes a one large sustainability agenda that can be driven and scaled up in a, I guess, concerted manner. And it's not just about product. We like mapping value chains. That's what we do as a company. And with the mapping usually comes the identification which areas are suitable for SMEs, for new businesses to thrive. And even with the tourism value chain, for example, we only see tourism in a large, I guess, a part of the habit is to look at tourism as going from A to B, enjoy yourselves at point B. But actually around it, there are different values that are being created, whether it's the food and beverage services, accommodation, transportation. And this is where we can then have a look at how SMEs can develop their integrated strategies within a specific value chain, and it can be integrated between the SMEs themselves. And so what we do in the empowerment side of bringing sustainability to the SMEs is a process design, where we look at a layer where it's needed to have enablers, a layer where it's needed to have different stakeholders and investment ecosystems, and then another layer where we look at, once the business have taken these sustainability integrated strategies, what do they do? How do we then report it back into the stakeholders? How do we then present it to the market? How do we then help these SMEs leverage the integrated strategy? So there is the process design, where it's the deal sourcing, it's the curation, it's the technical assistance around it, and also the impact reporting and monitoring, which Ibu Lany will touch upon a little bit later. Now, as it happens, Indonesia is hosting the G20, and we are working with the Investment Coordination Board, BKPM, and these organizations are working together in putting together a sustainable investment guideline. As a country, Indonesia is also understanding that there hasn't been a kind of a streamlined effort to look into the different metrics for sustainability and become a bridge or a translation between what the investors are looking for in terms of sustainable investments, and also what the SMEs are expecting, or what businesses are trying to access in terms of getting sustainable investments. And we're, as a host of the G20, the coalition, together with the BKPM, with the Investment Coordination Board, are have been running a series of events and activities, which includes, creating the guidelines, creating forums for investments, creating curation processes where SMEs who have had that training, so the first bracket I mentioned earlier, who have enablers around them, can now be empowered so they can grow their business, and Indonesia can have better trades with other countries in that sustainable industry bracket. So not just energy, not just agriculture, but any industry that's available within Indonesia. If you're talking about water metering, if you're talking about housing, if you're talking about anything, it has a proper access to sustainable investments. And of course, there's a strategic framework around it where it's not just the environment, not just the economy, but also the social and governance aspect of the investment opportunity. We are looking for feedback. I'll post in the chat box later on if you're interested in looking at the draft. If you're interested in also giving feedback on how this sustainable investment guideline could be shaped, please do so. We're still opening this public consultation until 15th of June. And before I close, I'm going to ask for 2 more minutes. I want to show you what we did with the SMEs that we trained and why then we work with different organizations.
Pada sektor secara global, sektor UMKM. Di Indonesia, sebanyak 87,5% UMKM terdampak pandemi COVID-19, 93,2% diantaranya terdampak negatif di sisi penjualan. Terpuruknya sang tulang punggung perekonomian, kondisi UMKM di awal masa pandemi membawa Indonesia kembali ke masa resesi. Krisis ekonomi yang terjadi juga berdampak bagi kelompok perempuan, penyandang disabilitas, pemuda, pekerja sektor informal, serta kelompok rentan dan marginal lainnya. Permasalahan global nyatanya tak berhenti pada isu pandemi. Perubahan iklim, penumpukan sampah, krisis air bersih hingga menipisnya ruang hijau juga tengah mengancam kelestarian bumi. Alam beserta isinya tengah memberi peringatan bahwa bumi juga butuh perhatian. Selain ekonomi, UMKM juga berperan menjaga kelestarian lingkungan, salah satunya dalam mengurangi jejak karbon. UMKM mampu menjadi pahlawan dengan tidak hanya berorientasi pada materi, melainkan turut andil menjaga bumi agar tetap lestari. UNDP bekerjasama dengan ASYX memperkenalkan bisnis lestari yang bertransformasi untuk menjadikan ekonomi yang lebih hijau, inklusif, dan berkesinambungan. Lebih dari 1.200 UMKM di Jakarta, Bandung, dan Surabaya melewati pelatihan dan mentoring tentang inovasi dan bisnis digital. Mulai dari FGD persiapan dan validasi modul bisnis lestari, pengumpulan tugas company profile, menyelesaikan tugas pitch deck, hingga mempelajari modul tulis dan video. Lebih dari 190 UMKM terpilih telah lolos proses seleksi dan pelatihan, kini memiliki profil bisnis lestari yang siap berkembang lebih jauh. Diharapkan program ini dapat memberi peluang kepada UMKM untuk membangun jaringan dan akses ke rantai nilai produk yang lebih besar, serta menjadi awal dari pertumbuhan UMKM yang menerapkan prinsip-prinsip inklusif, hijau, dan berkelanjutan. Mari bangkit bersama, go digital, dan bangun bisnis lestari.
So with that, I do invite you for a wonderful discussion today, and Ibu Lany will be explaining to us what her experiences in her experiences. Let me find that. There you go. Sorry about the advert. So Ibu Lany will then next take us on her experiences taking sustainability to SMEs. Thank you.
Thank you, Lishia. In that case, we can go straight to Ibu Lany's presentation. And over to you, Ibu Lany.
Thank you. So let me start. Nice meeting you all. So my name is Lany. I am with the Global Reporting Initiative. Since last year, I was anointed as the ASEAN Regional Program Manager. I've been with GRI for the last 4 years and I think 5 or 6 months. One of the reasons why GRI is in Indonesia is to develop a programs to support the SME. So let me start. Okay. Before we start, let me introduce you to GRI. Thank you, Pak Noke, already mentioning GRI in the Q&A. So GRI is the Global Reporting Initiative. We are still the #1 sustainability reporting standard, which is most referred by company, usually organizations in the world. In any kind of survey, you will see that the GRI is used by more than 50% of company in the world. So the KPMG survey says 73%, the WBCSD survey said 80-something%. So technically, we are still the most referred sustainability reporting standard. With the progress of GRI, when we were developed in 1997, 25 years in the journey, we can say that GRI standard is also referred to in some of the government policy in the world, usually by the capital market. We have a tracking system. You can see it under the carrotandsticks.net. This is updated every year. So in total, we have 673 reporting provisions all over the world, whether it says sustainability reporting or it refers to some sort like environmental impact or social impact or governance reporting. So we track this. What is the progress in the ASEAN region? So almost in all Asian regions, at least in the 6 countries, the capital market starting to regulate about sustainability reporting. Some is still voluntary, like Philippines and Vietnam. Some is becoming mandatory, like Indonesia, Thailand, and Singapore, and also Malaysia. So these are the progress. Sustainability reporting is getting mandatory, especially if you are engaged with the capital market. One of the most interesting development in terms of policy is the newly launched the Singapore Green Finance Action Plans. Part of the Green Finance Action Plan is actually also requiring SME to start telling on their progress in adopting sustainability business practices. Now let's go back to GRI. So why GRI is most referred standard in the world? We have the translation up to 12. We have the one in Bahasa. I think it's quite a while. I think more than 10 years now. The translation from Bahasa, if we take a look at the GRI database, we are the 4th most country who downloaded the GRI standards. Usually we have around more than 10,000. I think the last time it was 16,000 downloads only from Indonesia. So sustainability reporting or ESG reporting is going to stay and is growing bigger. GRI just launched the GRI Academy. So basically you can learn from the GRI Academy all about sustainability reporting and the GRI standard. We also have a certified training partner in Indonesia. You can learn from them too. The lecturer will be delivering the material in Bahasa. So let's go back to the SME issue. The funding support from the Swiss government, they do focus on their works in supporting the MSME. This is the I think this is the 3rd round. The Swiss government is supporting GRI to work with MSME. We have the best practices recorded from our work in Peru. Unfortunately, we don't have the best practices in our work in Indonesia. I think it's going to raise a question later. But the Swiss government believes that our work in Indonesia is progressing very well. So that's why they continue to invest in GRI to advance our work in Indonesia. So what is covered under the Swiss government's project, which is tagged as the SRRP, Sustainability Reporting for Responsible Business? Technically, we aim in 3 issues. First is to enhance the reporters' capacity for sustainability reporting. So we work with listed company, we work with non-listed company, we also work with the SME. We also want to create and improve the environment for transparency and disclosure through sustainability reporting. That's why we work we support the works of Koalisi Ekonomi Membumi and the Investment Ministry or BKPM in preparing their first sustainable investment guideline, as already mentioned by Lishia earlier. We also want to increase the use of corporate sustainability disclosure data by stakeholders. We work with university. The same thing in our work with SME and also with the university. It was not easy 4 years ago. Nobody knows about sustainability reporting, especially in the sphere of SME or academician. Very little people know about sustainability reporting or GRI standard. But now gradually, last year we have the Indonesia Sustainability Education Network. We share the material and the understanding about sustainability to the academician. As of now, we already partner, like I think it's getting to 14 different kind of university. During the 4 years of our work, I think we already recorded about 4 university established their center for research related to ESG data. So let's go to the regulatory frameworks and the international trends. I think most of you who are working with the capital market will be aware about the POJK 51 released in 2017. This POJK is a breakthrough for Indonesia. It mandated sustainable finance practices among the financial service institution. One of the other, how I'm going to say, one of the, so the POJK 51 still at the moment, because they also mandated the listed company to start preparing their sustainability report. Basically, due to COVID, as of this year, 2022, we should be able to access almost 700 sustainability report from listed company. So this is very nice progress in Indonesia. If you are not listed company, actually the other policy frameworks that can touch upon sustainability in business is the presidential regulations on SDG implementation. Because since its launch, the SDG Secretariat is engaging the private sectors because they want the private sectors to contribute significantly to the achievement of SDG in Indonesia. This one is still voluntary. The last one, which is coming up very fast, the POJK took about 12 years, if I'm not mistaken, before it released. This one, the guideline for sustainable investment, I think it took less than 1 year when it's going to be released. Now, at the global level, one of the policy trends that is going to impact the supply chain significantly is the long-awaited European Commission's Corporate Sustainability Directive, CSRD. And within the draft, it is required for company to do their due diligence. The due diligence means that they need to take a look at their supply chains and see how far the companies is actually influencing the good practices under their supply chain. Now let's go to the sustainability reporting. I think you hear from Lishia earlier that we have 190 profile from SME who joined the project. The profile is supposed to say something about the sustainability practices of the SME. So for us, sustainability reporting is about the practice of reporting publicly on organization impacts in economic, environmental, and social, whether it's positive or negative. Now, a lot of people say that sustainability reporting helps them to manage their company better, to set the goal, to start measuring performance, to manage change, and then to track the significant impacts made by company. And then to some people, some issues are really hard to digest, like emission, what is climate change? With sustainability reporting process, it helps them to understand, why climate change is important for my business is because of this one. Why decent work is important for my business because it is the impact is going to be this way. So sustainability reporting is a process for companies that help them to see their own practices and also to see their impact to the economic, environmental, and social. Now, this one is from WBCSD. I already mentioned some of them. We have emerging sustainability reporting standards. So we have SASB, which is now merging into the Value Foundation, and now planning to merge into the ISSP. So sustainability reporting standard is a growing mechanisms. Right now we have the ISSP trying to align the different kind of reporting and metrics so that it gives a better quality of the ESG data. So we should wait on the final result. Right now it's still in the public consultation period. Everyone is welcome to provide input to ISSP. Now let's take a look at the GRI standard. What is this all about? So the GRI standard consists of 3 types. So we have the universal standard, which should be complied by big company, small company, by multinational company. Even if you are an NGO wants to use the universal standard, the GRI standard, we recommend you to comply to the universal standards. Actually, I think last week the Atmajaya University just launched their first sustainability report. It was aligned with the GRI standard. It also aligned with I cannot remember the name. The sustainability standard for university, I think it's called STAR or TEAM. And GRI also works on delivering a sectoral standard so that it's better aligned on the requirement and to help companies to understand what are the sectoral impacts as recognized by public. And then the last one is the topic standard. When you start measuring, then you need to open the topic standards. So these are the concept of sustainability reporting. So basically what report is an impact and what report is all the material topics. And when we want to report on impact and the significant material issue, we need to do our due diligence and consult with the stakeholder. This is the foundation of the GRI standard. And we also have a reporting principles. It has to be accurate, balanced, clarity means, common people should be able to read your report. So it's not a report developed, for example, for the Ministry of Energy, so that only the energy sector can read your report. So basically, sustainability report should be able to be read by everyone. Now, the reporting principles also ask for comparability and completeness, and everything should be under the sustainability context because it is a sustainability report. It's not an annual report. What is under the sustainability report should be within specific timelines, and you should be able to verify the data and information that you write on the report. Now, when we say about impact, so the difference between ESG and sustainability, when we talk about sustainability, we identify the impact, whether it's positive and negative, whether it's actual or potential, whether intended or unintended, whether it's short-term or long-term, and those that contribute to sustainable development. Now, these are the 31 GRI topic standards. So many questions that came to us is, do we need to report all 31 topic standards? No, that's why the key foundation for GRI is impact and material topics, meaning that you need to analyze statements that you are using the GRI standard. Okay.
No, you're fine, Mbak Lany.
Okay,
it's
good.
Okay.
Now, let's go into the SME. This is based on our 4 years experience in Indonesia. So these are the progress. So if you are looking at Ibu Lishia slide, it says 2000, it says 1000. In total right now, based on the last documentation, we have already 4,000 SME in our GRI community. This is recorded under the Apindo website, Apindo UMKM Academy. So do all of them participate in our event? All of them are aware about our event. About 2/3 participate in our event. Right now, we are running a monthly sessions for the SME. As you can see, we have so many logos supporting our project. So basically, the invitation goes to all this community. This is not happening 4 years ago, not even 3 years ago, but this is what is happening now. We have more and more organization that works with SME in Indonesia, understand about the importance of sustainability for SME. So many starting to learn. We even work with the Business Development Support Indonesia, which is a network of 5,000 SME facilitator, and we bring down the understanding on how to do sustainability reporting to them. So the field is growing. We are engaged with Lishia, ASYX, through the Melati Nusantara project and to the Business Lestari project. And it's open access almost to everyone. Now, this is the example. There are two most favorite SME, according to me. They are amazing because these are the first, I'm going to say the first graduate from our program. They were the participant from the 2019. So Sundoro is really amazing. They produce instant noodle. It's called Mie Godok Jawa. When we met them, it was just an initiative for them. So she has a restaurant, a small restaurant, and then she thought she wants to bring this Jogja traditional culinary, Mie Godok, to the national level or even to the global market. So learning about GRI standard and sustainability reporting is just timely for them. It helped her to, how do you say it, to manage the way she wants to progress. So this is Sundoro now. When we met them 3 months ago, they said that they just sent, I think about 1,000 carton box to Switzerland supermarket. So they started to talk about sustainability. They talk about managing their waste. They talk about engaging the local community for their staff. And they also talk about, of course, because it's a food product, about hygiene, safety, and certification for food product. And the second one is Mbak Shanas from Rodokones. When we met her, she's already amazing, yeah. But with joining the GRI standard, she started to rebrand herself and calling herself as her product as a sustainable fashion product. Basically, right now she is working on getting some of the ladies, housewife, surrounding the neighborhood to become her supplier because her business is starting to grow. So when we met her, she only has about 4 staff. I think right now she has a workshop and it has more than 15 staff, and she needs to grow the supply chain. So she trained some of the housewife to provide the weaving, the leather weaving for her product. So she is somebody who is really amazing and growing very well. And both of them are the strong supporter. Almost when they met all the ministry, all the donor agency, and also the investor, they say, oh yeah, I have a sustainability report. I understand about GRI standard. So that's it, actually, my presentation. But I would like to show you a little bit about what is GRI standard. So this is our waste disclosure. This is how it looks for those of you who are here and the first time to hear about GRI standards. So when for example, like Sundoro said, waste is material for them, then Sundoro needs to take a look at the 306 GRI standard and see what needs to be measured and what needs to be reported. So usually the new structure is they need to write about the management approach. How do they track about waste being generated in which line of their production or which line of supply chains, and whether it's significant impact or not. And then if there is a significant impact of the waste, how do they manage this? And then for the measurement, they need to start doing the metrics to measure what type of waste, how many waste, and then whether it goes to the landfill or whether it's being processed for something else. So this is how it looks. Yeah. And we also provide the table for them to start calculating the waste. So I think I will stop here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ibu Lany, and also Ibu Lishia before Ibu Lany. So now we are open for question and answers. I see Ibu Lany also has mentioned about the comment from Pak Noke Kiroyan. but for the interest of our audience, let me read it in full again. The comment from Pak Noke Kiroyan is the following. In my view, companies that apply ISO 26000 sign up to the UN Global Compact, and as part of their communication on progress report using GRI standards, will be automatically applying ESG principles. There are no agreed standards on what constitute ESG. From my observation, ESG is regarded in Indonesia as a progression from CSR, which is a fallacy. So would you like to comment on this, Ibu Lishia or Ibu Lany?
Yes, there is no consensus. That's the fact. And many people use different versions of sustainability reporting. But on the SME side, I knew Ibu Lany from a couple of years ago when we started the journey in introducing sustainability reporting to SMEs. And at the time, I remember that our approach was telling the SMEs, look, you can use this as your marketing tool. So it wasn't presented as a sustainability reporting per se, but we present this as a different way to market your product to get their interest to understand what sustainability means. But then, as Panoka said, if you're reporting it, by default, you'd be implementing the principles in your business, which is something that we see in the SMEs as well. The moment they understand, oh, I can use this for my marketing, by nature, then internally they integrate that sustainability aspect into their business. And that's where from the education, we move to the enabling, and then we move to the empowerment. Bu Lany, can you maybe have another view?
Yeah, the ISO 26000, okay, this is, let me do a disclaimer first. Number one, I'm not an academician. I'm more on the practitioner side, so I might get it wrong, but this is my perception. It's true, the CSR is much more familiar for a lot of business people in Indonesia, even SME understand about CSR. But ISO 26000, as Pak Noko said, is all about the concept of sustainability, it's about the concept of social responsibility in the bigger sense. So if we go to the ISO 26000, I would like to call it, it is about talking about sustainability. It's not only talking, it is talking about sustainability under the context of corporate social responsibility. That's the correct term. Now for Indonesia, because sustainability comes a lot later, to some people it's easier to relate when they say, oh, this is one step more than CSR. I'm not going to debate whether it's right or wrong, but sustainability, take a look at sustainability is looking at the bigger pictures. You are looking at the environment, you are looking at the social, you are looking at your own governance. You are not only looking, when you look at the economic factor, you are not looking on how you make money, how much money you are making, but you are also looking at the bigger scope of your economic impact. So for me, the ESG, or I'm going to say the sustainability landscape in Indonesia is starting to be growing, especially with the POJK. So technically for Indonesia, POJK is, I'm going to say, the first regulations that mandated ESG data.
Just on that, Ibu Lany, when you say POJK mandate sustainability reporting, right? That is for listed companies, right? So
and
I was wondering,
all financial service institution.
Right, including SMEs?
If they are financial service institution, yes.
Right. But also in that regard, because the discussion so far, I think, were centered on the supply side of this reporting, meaning those who do the reporting, right? But in the introduction, we also talk about investor who screen their partners, who do this or who apply this ESG criteria, and that makes them more eligible, if you like, for to become counterparts or for investors. So how do you see that this is actually taking place already also in Indonesia? You know, certain investors, when they are looking for partners, they try to find, you know, if they are ESG compliant or things like that. So is that now what's happening, including in Indonesia?
Is it me? Oh, yeah.
Either of you.
Well, yeah, I mean, well, the timing is that right now what we're seeing is there is increasing demand for ESG related, whether it's reported publicly or whether it is integrated into their business model, which is presented through more of a pitch deck than a sustainable report. We are seeing more and more demand in this space. Not to say everybody's moving towards this demand at the moment, because we still see a lot of businesses that are based on business as usual, if you want to put it that way. But because there are increasing demands and because there are different ways to interpret what constitutes the sustainability or ESG aspect, that's why we then see, is there a way to streamline the understanding? From the investor perspective, when they get a proposal, or sometimes we get proposals as well, to support different projects, different SMEs, sometimes we ourselves find it difficult to agree on the same metrics. And that's why we're putting together this sustainable investment guideline to become this kind of an agreed metric. It has a similar framework. If one investor uses parameter A, then the SME understand that where it sits within their own operation. And equally, when the investor have a specific mandate for ESG-driven investments, the SMEs or the businesses who want to acquire that support speak the same language. And that's what we're trying to become, like an Esperanto of sustainable investment definitions. And it's even more prevalent in the financial sector because we see a lot of regulation. Earlier, I think there was also a comment on the Q&A box about multilateral banks imposing certain metrics, and then Europe has been more advanced in pushing this forward. But when it comes to the SMEs, their experience with growing a business plus having to comply with the business as usual requirements, now there's an additional layer to that, which could be the compliance side, or it could be a strategy side where they embed sustainability as part of their process. Now, when it comes to whether the investors are demanding this, yes, increasingly, yes. Are financial service providers demanding this because they have to comply to regulations like POJK, for example? Yes. Now, unless there is a bridge between these demand side and the supply side of the sustainable actors, then we'll always have this gap where the SMEs will always feel, I'm being left behind from the trade because I can't make it to the social compliance or environmental compliances to supply to larger value chains, or there's going to be this gap or exclusion to financial access because there's demand for compliance in ESG, but the business owners themselves don't have the understanding how to implement that. But to learn sustainability implementation from zero, it takes a while. But if we present it in the reporting, somehow it kind of gets embedded within the practices, which makes it a lot faster to close that gap.
Thank you, Lishia. You actually answered the question from Pak Heath Michael. So again, for the interest of our audience, I'll read that question again also. So Pak Heath McMichael from DFAT asked the following. Multilateral development banks like the World Bank, Asian Development Bank, and Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, AIIB, require loan recipients meet ESG standards. Can our speakers comment on the impact of MDB standards on Indonesian SMEs, the one that was just explained by Ibu Lishia? So next, we have two questions, one from Pak Budi, Professor Budi Reso Sudarmo, and another from Rachada Pornsilt. Let me check with them if they want to ask their question directly. Maybe Pak Budi is here. Mas Budi, are you there?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much. So first of all, great work. We appreciate. I think many people will appreciate this work. Very promising. However, my first question is that what do you think the prospect of upscaling, given the number of micro, small, and medium enterprises are so big? So and that's number one. Second is that also what is the prospect of your program itself will be sustained. So unless, in my opinion, unless there is a mechanism that you could embed it within the industry, so then the industry itself is actually self-generating the ESG knowledge, it seems upscaling and sustaining this effort is very challenging. Thank you.
Okay, anyone wants to address that? Ibu Lany, maybe?
So thank you for the question. So Pak Budi, that is one of the challenges that we have to address because right now we are technically run on a project. Yeah. So the idea working with academician is not in the project. It was because when we were here and then when we look at right and left, the number of people who are working on this issue is very, very small. So we started to think that this is a no-go. And then one of the complaints is that sustainability reporting is very expensive because they want to use a good consultant. So we thought, no, it's not a good idea. So we started to approach university. That's why when you take a look at the GRI, I'm going to say footprint in Indonesia in the last 4 years, you will see that we work with so many people. We work with university. I think we are still in the process of completing our trial on piloting with students in University of Hasanuddin and University of Patimura. COVID brings a lot of breakthrough for us. It gave us the possibility to work with so many universities. And Pak, this is out of something completely different. When I ran 4 years project in Indonesia, I usually return the money from donor. Our budget is very small, and then with everything going online since pandemic, we make quite a massive impact. Suddenly, from 9 university. We grow to 14, 15, and then still growing. And then, as I said earlier, they set up, like now, the Erlangga University, they have this center to do the research on ESG. They have a sustainable finance lab. The sustainable finance lab focus is to work with SME. And the same thing with Parayangan in Bandung. When we started, they are the first one who give us the idea to work with the university. So right now it is part of their ongoing program, I think, for the sustainability accounting class to work with SME. They even have a collaboration with the Bali Export Development Organization, BIDO, I think, for the export program. So there is for exit strategy to make this sustain, there is no other way than putting it on policy. What we are not yet successful is to make sure that either the Ministry of Cooperative or Ministry of Trade cemented this the sustainability as part of their policy. That one is still work in progress, but technically we have an MOU with the Ministry of Trade. Right now, my partner, Henry, is in Bogor. He's in hot demand. We actually need somebody to help Henry to work on this because there are only 2 of us. It's going to be only 1 of us. Henry is in hot demand by the Ministry of Trade to help them to educate the SME to understand about sustainability. We work with business development support organization. They have 4,000 facilitator across Indonesia. But as you know, sustainability reporting, or even the word sustainability, because it is a multi-sectoral, it is cross-academic issue. It takes time to learn about the issue. So that's from my side.
Thanks. And that provides a good segue to the next question from Rachada Arpon Silp. I'll read that question. Would you elaborate a bit more on how this can be applicable to the micro enterprises, those at the household or community-based enterprises? These are small scale and may not have adequate capacities and priorities in applying ESG and sustainability reporting. And another question is, what is your experience working with wood-based MSMEs? Can you elaborate more on lessons learned from working in a small-scale forest or timber business sector, if any?
I can try to address this one. So I think following to what Ibu Lany said, the collaborations matter. And that's why we work with trade associations, we work with chambers of commerce to introduce ESG or sustainability standards to the industries themselves. Not always in the sense that they have to report, but at least once they're aware of the parameters, they can start looking into what immediate small changes can be made. Now, when it comes to the micro businesses, earlier I mentioned a little bit about how we follow the journey, whether it's the pre-work, they don't understand or not having that knowledge of what ESG is and what sustainability metrics are, to those who are part of supply chains who sometimes, without realizing it, are at the recipient of ESG practices from the larger anchor clients, buyers, distributors, suppliers, etc. So when these community-based businesses are being involved into this world of sustainability, we have to start looking at where they are in the journey itself. If they are micro businesses operating within conservation or blue economy or supply chains that are by nature being spotlighted from a sustainability agenda, then it is easier to then enlighten the micro businesses that it's not about the reporting, but it is about the practice. How do you manage your waste? It's not about the reporting, but they can process something, they can make something in the community, and it's the practice itself that then takes them into the sustainability agenda. When it comes to wood-based, the supply chains are highly regulated. There are even certifications, FSC, one of them, that looks into the gold standard, how to manage these produces. It is easier to introduce sustainability because it's already part of the industry. But then for micro businesses that are orphaned, I would say, that's not part of any supply chain, that's not part of any relationship that leads that journey to more mature sustainability practices, then that takes a little bit more effort. And that's why higher education, ministries, different incubation and accelerator organizations will have a bigger role to play in rolling this out to these micro businesses that are somewhat disconnected from supply chains that have sustainability agenda throughout, upstream and downstream. So lessons learned from working with smaller businesses. At the beginning, sometimes they are afraid of the compliance aspect, that they feel they need to report things. ESG is seen as something that's quite complex, but when we break it down, sometimes it's as easy as your hiring decision. It's as easy as choosing the materials you work with. It's as easy as having financial disclosure and being transparent about it. So it doesn't then become this mythical creature where it has 1,000 faces around it that becomes this sustainability or ESG reporting. It becomes just a string of many things that they can do to create that change. Now, when it comes to small scale forest timber business sector, it depends on whether it's the harvest of these wood products, the processing of these wood products, and the communities around them, whether it's like a forest, is there a forest agenda around it? Because now we see a lot of forest related developments, or is this something that's quite remote? It just happens that they are in this small scale forest and timber business. I hope that helps.
Thank you. And I think that also answered a question from Michael Schapper about the micro-sized firms. But he has another part of that question about whether or not the carbon emissions as a whole sector of the micro enterprises have been measured. Do you have any experience or knowledge about this?
I guess it takes me back to the peatland project that we were in. There has been a lot of focus on the peatlands potential to help with carbon emission. But what we also tend to forget is measuring carbon impact of an activity, whether we go out to get coffee or whether we are developing a community. Yes, we can measure that, but what does that measurement mean? It's an estimate. It's almost like, how many calories do we have as an intake? How much gas are we producing to do one particular activity? Even if they can be measured, it is not a guarantee that that carbon impact would then have an impact on the carbon economy, because that's a whole different world. Measuring what they do, yes. Can we reduce or can we improve that? Maybe. But then if there's no other benefit or there's a disconnect with the carbon economy itself, the activity of measuring that carbon emission becomes just a nice to know kind of information, and it doesn't translate to the development of these micro SMEs. It's hard enough for the SMEs to understand and grasp and then implement sustainability standards, sustainability practices. And when we put another layer yet again, which is the carbon impact of that, it will then, I think, scare them away instead of actually getting them to use sustainability and to understand what carbon impact means at especially the micro level.
Okay, thank you. I see one virtual hand there from Nengyanti. Nengyanti, did you want to ask question directly? Yes. Are you there? Or maybe not. So is there any other questions from the audience or comments? No. While waiting, Ibu Lishia and Ibu Lany, I was wondering, is there any cost for these SMEs to do their, sustainability reporting to comply with these ESG criteria? Give us some perspective of the cost that they have to incur in doing this, if any.
No cost.
No?
So
okay.
Anyone can generate their own report.
Right.
ANU too. I would be looking forward for ANU sustainability report, hopefully soon. So anyone can do their sustainability report. As you can see, there are I think over 100,000 at one point. We recorded 600,000 download of the GRS standard, so it's free. Anyone can download and take a look at it. Cost is coming in when you started to think that, oh, I cannot write this and I need somebody. Or cost is coming in when you are starting to think, oh, I want it to be pretty. There are a lot of pictures. So so that is the some of the part. But definite cost is coming if you want to validate your report,
Right.
or another way, audit your report. It will incur some cost.
Right.
Either you assure the whole thing, or you do partial assurance of the report. For example, some prefer only do the verification for their emission report, because it is required by some investor or some donors. Some do the we call it assurance, looking whether the report is prepared in accordance with the standard that they say they are using to prepare the report.
Right. To go back to our earlier discussion about the demand side, of course, I mean, pardon the economist in me. I mean, I understand there is always a incentive for doing something, right? And then even for the SMEs, I think there has to be some incentive to do that prompt them to comply with this criteria. And for example, you mentioned a good story about Sundoro. Was it Sundoro? You mentioned that actually they managed to penetrate Switzerland market. So my question was, I was wondering, is that because of the requirement from the market that they have to have some kind of, this reporting, and then so they decided to do that, and it's good, and that they could enter the market, or is there any other motive in addition to that?
So when we met Sundoro, they are still not producing. They don't have a warehouse. They don't have a mini factory at that time.
Right.
So sustainability reporting for them is useful to have. The name is Tanti, Ibu Tanti, to manage her business.
Right.
So that is for her. For other part, sustainability reporting is useful when they meet with buyer, because some buyer require a lot of data. So if you do have that sustainability report, it will help them to negotiate with buyer. But the audit from buyer will still go. Yeah, it does not negate the need for doing an audit by buyer. Sure. So we were quite popular among the exporting small company or micro company. If they want to do export and they have gone through buyer audit, sustainability report is really seen as something that is useful, because an audit, usually like any kind of audit, you have separate document all over the room, and then there is no, it was not recorded as one document. So when the audit finished, it goes back to the shelf. So with sustainability reporting, then you have this document. What you need to do is just update it every year so that the data is updating, and it's easier also for you to manage. If the auditor asks for, is there any accident? Oh yeah, we have the record. No accident in the last 3 years, something like that. So it's something useful for them.
Okay, thank you. There's another question from Pak Noke, but let me ask if Pak Noke is willing to also participate by asking directly. Pak Noke, can you talk?
Certainly.
Oh, thank you, Pak Noke. Welcome. Go ahead,
Can you
Pak.
hear me?
Yes.
Well, I think we are in agreement that CSR, ESG, and sustainability are all related concepts. But in Indonesia, particularly among government officials, CSR is understood as not only government officials, but also many corporations. I think if you talk about CSR, you're talking about dana CSR. And the emphasis is on the dana. So as long as you spend some money, you're already committed to CSR. And I would be interested in knowing what the speakers have to say about that. How can we address this? Because this is definitely not sustainable. Right. Talking about dana CSR has nothing to do with sustainability, but this misconception is very widespread.
Thank you, Pak Noke. Ibu Lishia, maybe?
Yes, and I think many people have forgotten that the spirit for CSR is about that corporate citizenship. It's not just about the dana, which then actually requires a little bit of thinking what kind of shared value that the company or the corporate can provide to its stakeholders, including the social aspects of it. And that's why it's called the corporate social responsibility. But then it is, I think, a trend that unfortunately has taken us into the Dana CSR, which is the money orientation side of things, because when we look at any financial report, CSR is always a cost center. It's not an investment into something. It's not an R&D or an incubation within the company, but it is a cost line item that provides resources from the company to its stakeholders around them. The easiest, of course, is to then finance different things. Pertamina has huge CSR project, and then they say, this is part of us contributing as a corporate citizen. And then another one, Unilever would have a huge part of CSR funding to do different things, charity work, for example, which is quite a shame because we do have to take the concept back to that shared value idea, how then this corporation works with its stakeholders, even if it's a cost center, but there is other value other than the dana that needs to be put in place. Now, with sustainability agenda as part of the corporate activity or a private sector activity, it is also a struggle to get even government officials to understand that this is not just a tick box kind of activity, that it is actually about changing the processes, about changing how we relate with the social context of things, how then governance take place within an organization, whether it's profit-oriented or non-profit-oriented. But that level of understanding does take time. And as Acho also mentioned, if there's no incentive, why would people want to do it? Now, for the government official, it's hard enough for them to grasp the business, immediate business policy needs. And now they have to grasp a new kind of context, which is sustainability and ESG. And a lot of this is also driven by, oh, if I implement this, if I promote this, then investments will pour in, buyers will come in, and that's something that they can report as their achievement or as part of their KPI. Unless we put a concerted effort into making sure the concept also doesn't get lost the way CSR concept got lost in the past, I think in the future, even sustainability or ESG driven agenda could also then end up being that dana ESG or investment opportunity, market opportunity, sustainable opportunity, and it's always going to be seen as just that tick box thing. So it's unfortunate, but since we're at the beginning of it, people are interested in it because of different incentives that they find, whether it's market, investment, loan, etc. We have the opportunity to then set the course kind of back into that shared value idea, I think.
Thank you, Ibu Lishia. Ibu Lany, you have something to add?
If I may.
Yes,
so
sure.
Dana CSR is actually more commonly practiced as philanthropist activity of a corporation. Maybe if we can sort of shift the terms, rather than calling it Dana CSR, maybe we can say it's a philanthropist fund, corporate philanthropist fund. Maybe it will put it on the more better track than that one. On the other hand, under the POJK 51, it actually requires company to report on the allocation of fund, I think for sustainability. Basically, the fund that they allocate to finance activities related to sustainability. So it can be used for environmental impact activity, social or even economic impact activity. They call it LSD, ESG fund or LSD fund, or I think in the bigger word it's called sustainability fund. So maybe just starting to use the correct terms. If what we mean by CSR fund is actually philanthropist fund of the corporate, maybe we should shift it to philanthropist fund rather than calling it keep calling it Dana CSR, and then makes people much more confused. The last remark is that unfortunately ISO 26000, despite its very nice and very good structures and standard, it was not. It was less popular than the suddenly rising sustainability framework standard because of the POJK.
Okay, thanks, Ibu Lany. Let's take the last question from Ibu Depi Susilawati. Do you think value chain partnerships between large-scale actors and SMEs would help SMEs to comply with sustainability standard?
Yes.
Yeah. Definitely. I think yes, large scale actors, partnerships with smaller ones do help. But we also tend to forget that smaller businesses interact and do trade with other small businesses too. So it doesn't necessarily have to be large scale with small ones. I think these days we also hear like closed loop being mentioned in different situations. But amongst the SMEs, they also trade amongst each other. So when one SME, even if they're small, they're already using sustainability principles, even if they're not reporting, then the trading partner, which is another SME, could be slightly bigger, slightly smaller, would then be influenced to using the same practices. As Ibu Lany said, sometimes it helps when you talk to the buyer, it helps when you talk and negotiate. There are value propositions from a sustainability practice point of view that you can provide. And so yes, the large and small partnerships help, but it's also unfair to put all the burden on the large scales to bring the rest of the SMEs into the sustainability space, because in Indonesia, 63 million businesses exist, only 5,000 are large, and the rest are relatively smaller. And the medium ones only make up maybe around 800,000 companies. And between these 800,000 companies, they also trade with the micro. And among the micro businesses, they also trade amongst each other. So it's not always about large and small partnerships, but partnerships in general between companies that are exposed to ESG practices with other companies who are probably at the beginning of their journey.
Nice. I think our time is almost up. I'd like to thank both speakers, Ibu Lishia and Ibu Lany. Thank you so much for sharing with us. I think this is a very important concept. And also thank to our audience, Pak Noke. Thank you so much for participating. And with that, I'll return this back to Lydia, who might have some announcement to say. Over to you, Lydia.
Thank you, Acho, and thank you to all speakers this afternoon or this morning in Indonesia. I'd just like to let everyone know about our next event, which will be next week, a public lecture by Professor Bambang Projonegoro, which will be also online on Zoom. If people in Indonesia are interested, you can register in the link that I've shown below, or you can look at our website also to get the information. So that's all from me. Thank you, everyone, and see you soon. Good luck with your work, Mbak Lishia and Mbak Lany. Thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.